they led again with the best match on the program. And this not only was the best match on the program, they can do it if they try. This was an example of what I have been talking about all along, is that smart workers, excellent workers, people who know what they're doing in this business, they work with people of different levels in a different fashion. And obviously, let's say this at the start, old Wheeler is not ready. And by the way, if you have to pick a name, that's not his given Christian birth name. And if you had to pick a name to be a wrestler, why is Wheeler Yuta the name you'd pick? But besides that.
You know what Howard Baum said? Howard Baum said this, and I can't unsee it now, and it's so funny, but it's wrong. He was reviewing in the Mothership Group, the Dynamite show, and he said MJF versus normal superhuman. And once you see it, you can't unsee it.
He's not ready for this spot on national television. I'm not even saying he never will be. Maybe I am, but definitely not now. We all know that. And for whatever reason, like Daniel Garcia, who's in the same boat, Tony has decided that these two, of all the people that he could have chosen to smash over like this, these two are what he's going to do. So they obviously instructed or wanted Yuta to be shined up by MJF in this match, but MJF had to be the one to put it together because it was completely different from almost any other AEW match you see. It made sense. There was a story to it. If you noticed, MJF, and when I watched this match, I was tired because there was a fiasco with the power and the DVR, and I watched this match after I'd seen the rest of the program, but I was tired. I didn't want to take notes. I just wanted to watch it because I was convinced I wasn't going to like it because I thought here's going to be Yuta kicking the shit out of MJF and whatever. And yes, they did shine Yuta. But if you noticed, MJF, he built the thing. They want to see Yuta come off the top rope. So what does MJF do? He takes it away from the people and makes them wait for it. He's there. He rolls away when Yuta goes to the top. And that way the people don't get to see what they wanted to see. So they're mad at fucking MJF for taking it away from them. But when he finally hit it, then they exploded. And at the same time, MJF, he keeps attention on himself, the smart-ass facial expressions, the heelish things that he did. He put Yuta over and made Yuta competitive, but at no time was Yuta beating him within an inch of his life to where you could see desperation on his face that how in the world am I going to win this thing? You didn't see that because a lot of it was mat wrestling where Yuta could get false finishes out of it in 2 counts, or he could duck under and surprise MJF the heel with his better wrestling because he's the baby face. But it wasn't like if there was somebody wearing MJF out with a kendo stick or throwing him through furniture. So this is how a top-level main event star works with a middle card guy trying to help make him look better and still at the same time not making it look like that's the best that MJF can ever do, beating this guy by the skin of his teeth. Does that make any sense to you, Brian?
It makes perfect sense, and I think you just described what was actually happening there.
And that's why I thought it was the best example of a match of this kind that they've ever had on the program. And again, if it was out of anybody that might be ready for that spot, you can see a few, pick them. It would have been even better, but as it was, this was the best match start to finish that Yuta's ever had because he listened and it made sense and they didn't do shit that was either preposterous or lacking in logic or that would give you the impression that MJF is cooperating with his own demise or downfall. So by that, it was an excellent piece of business ending. Obviously, the finish was, one of Tony Khan's finishes, and it has to be screwy, and there's people coming in, and there's goddamn, outside interfere, whatever the fuck. But MJF wins, and that debacle didn't take place where MJF would actually do a job. My God, even they're that smart. And they did a great job with what they had, with the conditions that prevailed and what they were working under. This couldn't have been any better, I didn't think. So let MJF lay out everybody's matches, and you'd have a stunning television program. What'd you think?
Certainly the high point of the show. It's a good thing that this was also by far the most viewed segment, or segments, I guess it may have rolled into the second segment, that AEW had, because here's another thing we have to say before we even talk about the match, because it's becoming more and more apparent and the ratings are starting to bear it out. MJF's now the biggest star in AEW. I know Moxley and Jericho have been there for a while and they're big stars. MJF is right now, he's already the biggest star in AEW.
Well, let's break that down a minute, because I may be able to say that better for you. Because I know what you're trying to say, but a lot of people are going, oh, Brian Last lost his mind. He's on MJF's dick to the point where now he's saying he's a bigger star than Chris Jericho and John Michaels, blah, blah, blah.
He is?
Well, he's not necessarily a bigger star, because a bigger star would indicate more people know him and he's a big major presence. And actually, because of Jericho having 20 years of television and Moxley being in the WWE and everything, they may still be bigger stars. What you're talking about is right now in AEW, who do the people want to see more? Who do they want to watch? Who do they want to see on television? A more attractive star. Who's the next big star?
And also, who does the network want? They recognize what's going on right now, too.
Yeah, because you may like filet mignon, but filet mignon, you've been eating filet mignon for, well, I don't know, maybe in Jericho's case, maybe we ought to talk about canned ham. But nevertheless, you've been eating that fucking steak for a long time, but along comes this delicious seafood dish, and you got to try, and MJF is the delicious new dish. He's still fresh. He's still always good. He still always gets a reaction. He's new. He's different. He's unique. He attracts attention wherever he goes because of that. And Moxley does same thing, and Moxley always does, and Jericho does same thing Jericho always does, and even if you like it, you've seen it. So MJF may not be a bigger star. MJF may be the most important star, the most attractive star, the star that people want to look at right now and want to watch. And honestly, he's running away with it. And Punk's not on television to give him any competition in terms of the promos and the audience engagement. I don't know anybody in the company. Maybe Danielson is the guy who can put together matches that, when he's allowed to and has an opponent that'll go along with it, that make as much sense and are as exciting and logical and get everybody over and put everybody in the right place. But MJF's got a little bit of everything, and nobody else has his package. See what I did there?
And you want to talk about MJF? He was in great shape here. Maybe the best shape we've ever seen him in the ring. Wheeler Yuta looks like he's on the way to take a Peloton class. You know what I mean? So you're looking at the two of them standing there, and one of them looks like a wrestler. Even though he's not 6'5" or anything. He looks like a wrestler. The other guy they're force-feeding Wheeler Yuta. And there's a segment of the audience that likes it, and they've done everything. They put him with Moxley and Claudio and Regal. He's wrestling all these guys that are already established. While FTR and Wardlow were kind of buried, Garcia and Yuta became Tony Khan's biggest pet project. And they're not giving up. Even though these guys can't pull ratings, unless they're in there with an MJF, because we've seen what happens when they're in there with Jericho, the ratings go down. But they're forcing these guys, and I think Yuta's all right, and I hope he fills out at some point. But they're pushing him way too hard for who he is and what he's going to mean to that company. I hope I'm wrong because they're not going to give up. I hope he ends up being just a phenomenal wrestler and establishes some real charisma. I hope I don't have to keep thinking of him as the normal superhuman now. But this match was all about MJF. And that goes into the second thing I wanted to say because you didn't really address it. What the fuck was the post-match? They're teasing the babyface MJF turn, which I think more than anything, this match pointed out what a mistake that would be. He's the only working heel they have there in the ring. They're going to make him a babyface? Why? Because Chris Jericho's trying to convince Tony that's the thing to do? So I don't like that post-match stuff where they're teasing MJF as a babyface, and then he runs from Regal.
Well, MJF always backs down when it's face-to-face or the odds are even or whatever. I didn't have a problem with that. And also Regal's wearing brass knuckles. And also Regal's tougher than everybody else on the roster. So I, didn't have...
Yeah, it took him 10 minutes to get into the ring.
Well, but at least he made it. But yes, and I agree. And I don't know what's going on with this. Oh, I didn't ask you to help me business with the blah, blah, blah. It would have been, if they'd have gone for the handshake and fucking MJF would have shook his hand and kicked him in the balls, it'd been perfect. Perfect and get out. But nevertheless, here's another thing. And I've sat in on these meetings in the WWF, and I assure you, just because Vince is not there, they're still having these same kind of meetings. You know what Triple H is going to ask about prospective talent? Because they have their people, they're watching shows, and they have Regal was a scout. And they have people in these positions where they watch everybody and everything and blah, 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 see who fits their needs. But you know what they're going to look at that MJF. Look at him 3 years ago when the company went on the air. Look at him 2 years ago. Look at him now. He's put the work in the gym. He's in the best shape of his life. He's gained size, so he looks legitimate, but he's not fat nor weighed down. He's obviously, his work has, and they made a big deal of saying he hadn't wrestled in AEW in 129 days. The fuck of... But anyway,
the commentating is a whole nother problem. It's a disaster show-wide. Show-wide.
That really gets a guy over. Yeah, he hadn't wrestled in 4 months. But again, the WWF or WWE, when they have meetings about talent, prospective talent, who's out there, who are they looking for, they look at that. Not only has his work improved, not only does his quarter hours get ratings, not only are his interviews at another level than almost everybody in the business except Heyman and a couple other people. He's transformed his body. He's grown up. He carries himself like a star. He is and lives his gimmick. Those are all important things that in the WWE and in that, whether developmental system, training system, or just system, they take note of. But meanwhile, here's the same guy that would be getting every kind of push in the world under the WWE umbrella by the basis of the parameters of what they look for in talent. And over on the other side, he hasn't wrestled on television in 4 months. And I know he was gone with the contract schmabada, but he's been back for how long now? What was it? Over a month. So anyway, I don't know what they're doing with the finish, but this was the shining moment of the show.